Would-be electrical vehicle shoppers are concerned with three main things: range anxiety, dated technology, and replacement of battery costs. I've got a story of a customer in Ontario, Canada that drove the wheels off his Ioniq 5 for many kilometers. And then he hit the end of the road where all of a sudden the vehicle started shorting out, having electrical problems. And then he realized very quickly after a short trip to the dealer where the dealership actually ran some diagnostics on his Ioniq and realized this person had some big issues. Most battery manufacturers in a lot of these electric vehicles are now warranting their batteries for up to 8 years or about 160,000 kilometers or about 100,000 miles. In Tesla's case, a little bit higher, but that is about the average. Now, in a roundabout way, that is roughly the lifespan you would anticipate out of a vehicle. Now, it's not uncommon to find a modern day Toyota or Honda that can run 300,000 or 400,000 kilometers, maybe 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 miles on a good day with a significant amount of maintenance. But when you're driving an electric vehicle, once you hit that 100,000 mile mark, all bets are off. Warranty's gone. And that's where things get real. Now, this customer from Stony Creek, Ontario, drove his 2017 Ioniq, all of a sudden started to fault out, and of course it needed further diagnostics. The unfortunate part is he was an earlier adopter. So he had about 172,000 kilometers on the vehicle when it started to act up. Now granted, he bought the vehicle used with about 69,000 kilometers on it, so he put approximately 100,000 kilometers or about 60,000 miles on his vehicle, which isn't a long period of time. A lot of people can do that in 3 or 4 quick years, and then clearly he found a real big problem. Now once the dealer was done analyzing what was going on with the vehicle, he was actually welcomed to a really substantial bill. The local Canadian dealership, which is an independent dealer of sorts, quoted this individual about $50,000 for a replacement battery for his Ioniq. Obviously, with sheer dismay, disheartenment, jaw-dropping response, this individual just elected to essentially walk away, scrap the vehicle, and no questions asked. Now, the unfortunate part is a lot of these car manufacturers aren't even thinking about it. It's not uncommon to drive a BMW, a Mercedes, and having to tell a customer that he's got to put $15,000 gearbox in or a $22,000 engine in there. That's not necessarily old news, but this whole concept of electric vehicles is sort of new. And a lot of people assume that they can drive these vehicles rent-free for many years, trouble-free, with little to no cost. Well, clearly a lot of customers, and especially the earlier adopters now, where their backs are against the wall with some of the mileage now exceeding that 160,000 kilometers. Now, after doing a little bit of research, we found out, a lot of people talk rhetoric and say, yeah, I think electric batteries are going to be 10,000, 20,000. We don't really know. A lot of people are actually literally shooting off the hip when they say that. But here in reality, I've got a collection of numbers and dollars associated with specific vehicles, early type electric vehicles that have had battery replacements or repairs. For example, a 2014 Ford Focus EV, actually only worth about $11,000 at the time, required a $14,000 battery replacement to get it back on the road. As well, a 2018 Kia Soul needed a battery that cost about 23 grand. And even more eye-watering is a 2012 Chevy Volt, a car that was really only worth maybe $8,000, $9,000, $10,000, needed a battery worth $30,000 US to go back into that car to outfit it to get it back on the road. And we all know the Chevy Volts were some of the early versions, just like the Nissan Leafs. A lot of these are earlier varieties, older battery technology, not to take away from the simple fact that these batteries are huge money, and a lot of people go into this blind. They don't realize what a battery actually costs. And the worst part, without warranty, all bets are off, and that's the sad part. Again, as I say, 8 years, maybe 100,000 miles, and you're finding yourself stuck. So what are you going to drive? Your electric vehicle, your brand new Ioniq, your brand new, any of these electric vehicles for 5 years and get out while the getting's good? It's no wonder why depreciation is crushing these vehicles. Why electric vehicles aren't selling used very well and depreciation just destroys them on the used car market. It's no reason why. Obviously, there is a reason why, and we're seeing it, that dealers can't unload used electric vehicles. Used Teslas that are 3 or 4 years old on the lots are very difficult to sell, and they're considered a high risk by any dealer trying to pitch one of these used Teslas. Now, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory actually indicates that your average modern day battery can actually last 12 to 15 years, but that's in ideal conditions. We don't all live in Houston, Texas, or Southern California, and in extreme climates, you can actually lose the lifespan of that battery set and knock it way down to about 8 to 10 years, which is much more realistic as a lot of consumers are northern US. Of course, we have Canadians. We also have Eastern Europeans, and a lot of those markets do see winter. They see 4 seasons. They see minus 20 or 30 degrees Celsius half of the year, and those are the extreme climates that we're talking about. If you live in southern states and you get into the deserts, the Phoenixes, Arizonas of the world, New Mexico, and places like that have the extreme heat, which will also vastly deteriorate these batteries. And so will bad charging practices. For example, charging grossly over 80%, running them harder charging these batteries, using them on the fast chargers. As they say, you should actually be charging them on a slow charger for a longer period of time. It's easier on the batteries if you get in that habit. But then it takes it back to becoming more inconvenient, and that's just what customers are looking for. They're looking for convenience. They don't want less convenience, and they certainly don't want to be hit with a $50,000 battery repair bill after 8 years. Now, in defense, of course, a lot of electric vehicle manufacturers are starting to get wise. They're trying to find ways to make a lot of these costs more palatable. In some cases, some of these manufacturers are agreeing to eat half the cost of these batteries, and a lot of it becomes a case-by-case scenario. Another thing to note is, specifically in Canada and other markets, as we start to develop and we start to see more electric vehicles on the marketplace, there's going to be obviously an integration of the insurance companies' policies, and the policies there might allow for people to add coverage. For example, if you run into a steel rod that's laying on the road, for example, in cases like we've seen here, where that could pierce or damage the undercarriage or damage the batteries, where you could add certain policies directly to the batteries, or even collision comprehensive coverages that might have those excerpts in there that can allow for the compensation for some kind of damages related directly to the batteries that will take you out with a $50,000 tab. So you definitely want to look at some of your insurance policies and ante up if you can, but it still doesn't change the fact that when you're outside of warranty, if these batteries outright fail, your policies may or may not cover that. So you better be checking the fine print before you lay all your eggs in that basket. And there is, unfortunately, another story I can share with you. In BC Columbia, which is in Canada, West Coast, there's another customer with a 2022 Hyundai as well, which actually was in had a little bit of a minor collision, and it warranted the vehicle to go into the dealership to estimate on obviously some potential damage repairs. They too were confronted with a $60,000 tab to repair this vehicle. Now, because it wasn't a natural fault and it was an actual mechanical structural issue with a damage, it wasn't something that was covered under warranty, and then the owner was stuck snooker, didn't know what to do. They end up having to go to the insurance company to pursue options there. And then ICBC, which is the regulating insurance organization within BC, British Columbia, Canada, actually decided upon seeing this vehicle, the decision was made to write it off entirely, because that $60,000 put this vehicle in a place where it was just not worth fixing, and that buying a brand new vehicle made more financial sense. So the decision was made to scrap a 2022 vehicle. Clearly a big problem. So almost any little minor fender bender that might compromise the battery's integrity or its safety could literally write your vehicle off, even with a relatively minor damage. Could you imagine driving over a little rock or a boulder that would normally, in most cars, might just pop a little dent in the floorboards? Now you could actually find a scenario where it actually writes your vehicle off. Now, it's not all horror stories, and quite frankly, I met numerous people who bought Teslas, and they say they would never go back. They're clearly loving the vehicle. So all is good in love and war, and all is good when you're riding the coattails of ignorance is bliss. And that's the unfortunate part, is a lot of consumers don't actually know what they're riding on. It's the magic carpet ride indeed, and it provides a lot of benefits like great fuel economy. There might be some cost savings. The benefits are obviously getting into a cleaner environment where they're emitting less pollution in the atmosphere. A downside could be when you're dealing with aged equipment, you're definitely going to be faced with some significant costs potentially just staring down the barrel of this. But unfortunately, holding on to a Tesla, holding on to an EV like an Ioniq or a Tesla Bolt EV or any other electric vehicle that's coming onto the market could put you in a place of financial distress as well as a catastrophic financial failure. Now, it's not for everybody, clearly, and we know what the mandates are. By 2035, the push is to have everybody riding around in electric vehicles, but that is clearly why, another key reason why a lot of people are not early adopting the technology, and they'd rather ride out the internal combustion engines as long as they physically can. Because, for example, say you drive a Honda Civic and you blow an engine at 250,000 kilometers, it's probably only going to cost you $6,000 or $7,000 to put a brand new engine in, and then that's good for another 200,000 or 300,000 kilometers. So clearly, it's until a lot of these electric vehicles are a lot more cost effective, particularly in the long run, there's still going to be a lot of people shy to dive right on board the electric vehicle marketplace. Unfortunately, this problem isn't going to afflict just Hyundai or Kia, and in my opinion, the best way to manage this is to create a process, make it fair and consistent, and it be upfront. And obviously every manufacturer should have that information. And when they're selling one of these new electric vehicles, and I don't care if it's a new Mercedes EQE, or whether they're talking a Bolt EV, or we're talking a Porsche Taycan, or whether we're talking a Hyundai Ioniq, this information should be on the front end. I mean, this is the key stuff. These are the questions that customers have. They all know, okay, well, it charges in 4 hours, or on a fast charger I can get a charge in a half an hour. That's a piece of important criteria. So is the cost of MSRP, so is the cost of tires, so is insurance, but how much is maintenance? Everybody knows that an oil change for a traditional car might cost you $100 to $200, depending if you go a conventional car versus a luxury car. But this is an unknown, uncharted territory, and it's not unique for Hyundai and Kia, and I'm just asking the question of a lot of these manufacturers to become just a little bit more transparent. And well, they want to advocate for this new technology, and they want to advertise, and they want to pitch it and net market it and sell it to the general public. The fact remains is all these details need to be in front of the consumer so they can make an educated decision on what their next car purchase is going to be. And it might be that electric vehicle, and they might be willing to tolerate that risk, and they might be willing to say at 10 years this vehicle is worthless, or they might not. But at the end of the day, the power should be back in the consumer, and any of these manufacturers that start to develop electric technology in their vehicles should be in a place where they're sharing that information. That's all I'm saying. This isn't unique for this manufacturer, and I guarantee you, with a lot of these brands, and I've already given you some examples, it's not uncommon to find some pretty expensive battery replacements for any of these modern day vehicles. And as the battery technology gets better, everybody assumes it's going to get cheaper. Well, solid state or some of the technology you're going to get in some of the batteries is likely going to make charge time quicker, capacity quicker or bigger and larger. But some of that might come at a cost, and batteries could even get more expensive, unfortunately. So all we're asking is, let's be real. Let's understand what's in front of us when you're buying your next electric vehicle. If you're shopping for it, just understand what the whole storyline is, and don't just go in there with horse blinders on, because at the end of the day, it's money out of your pocket. And if you drop $80K today, you'd like to think after 7 or 8 years that vehicle is not $0. And insurance companies aren't always there as your escape net. So hope everybody enjoyed the video. Please do as well. If you do drop a line, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And most importantly, do check out that video right there. We're talking about what's going on in the truck market right now. It's collapsing. Hope to see each and every one on the next one. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.